This is what chronotheism is. I've explained this, but I like to call this philoscientifical instead of philosophical, scientific, philoscientifical, basically, Because without philosophy and science, you can't understand this. You have to understand that it takes the X and Y factor to progress, basically, perpetuate. And that is male and female energies or male and female understandings, which is basically your brain and your heart. Because females tend to think more with their emotions and their heart. Men tend to think more with their head, whether it's the little one or the big one. There's more of a scientific kind of view, and women use more of a philosophical kind of view. Anyway, all right, let's go with the universe. Now, this is the most pragmatic and realistic explanation of God that anyone's probably ever submitted. And using Occam's razor, the simplest explanation is most likely the correct one. Instead of adding any factors without reason, just keep it simple and scientific with what we know. All right, the universe. Well, a Holy Ghost. Now, we always consider God as the male or he, but that would be the alpha. Because alpha is nuclear energy. All right, I'll get to that in a second. All right, so this Holy Ghost. Now, the universe is basically a whole. It's the whole of space. It's just the whole. It's a black hole. It's space. That's it. So it's holy. A ghost has no form. It's not anthropomorphic at all. So the universe would technically be the Holy Ghost. This would be the quantum energy or the quantum nature of the universe around us. Just like we can manifest things depending on how our outlook, or if we, think positive and positive things will happen, such as this. They've done plants on tests with plants. Positive interactions or negative interactions tend to affect the plants. Just like water, having a positive or a negative perspective on it will create a different outlook or a different, basically a different outcome, more or less. I mean, whether it's positive or negative. So this is like the quantum nature of the universe around us. All right. Now, Occam's razor. Entities should not multiply without necessity. The simplest solution. Okay. Now, people always add what ifs. Oh, what if this? What if that? Look, don't add all that. Just keep it simple. Keep what you know, and just what would that do in response. Don't start saying, oh, well, we got this, so what if blah, 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 and then start adding this and yada, yada, yada. Then it starts getting completely complicated, and that one thing that was added completely changes everything, like chaos theory. One small increment of a difference, and boom, it completely causes disarray. All right, so don't add anything if there's no reason to add it. All right, so we got space. All right, now space is 1 and 0 for the mathematical people. This is something and nothing. It cannot be made or erased. It's a void, chasm, oblivion, infinity. Basically, space cannot be erased because when you remove space, what do you have? It's just more space. You can't remove space. The only way to remove space is by filling it up. Okay? And you can't fill up infinity. So whenever the Big Bang blows up to make space, that's the exact opposite of what you're doing to make space. You're not filling something up to make space. That's the exact opposite of what you do. So technically the Big Bang has a hole in it right there. Not to mention the fact that space literally always has to exist for there to be an area for the singularity to exist. Okay? So if there's no space or any page like I've written here, imagine this page is space, I couldn't write these letters down. How am I going to write down these letters and words and numbers? How am I going to do all that if there's no space for it? See what I'm saying? So space has to always exist. That's one of the flaws in the Big Bang Theory. All right. First law of thermodynamics. Energy cannot be created nor destroyed. It only transforms. Okay? This is nuclear and electric energy. E equals mc squared. This is the singularity. Because this energy will come together to perform this mass of plasma. Because plasma is living energy. And this nuclear and electric energy coming together creates this plasma or this cosmic cell, which is the singularity. And boom, it explodes at the speed of light squared. Okay, because that's the depth. Okay, so you have that three-dimensional and depth, that's the speed of light squared. All right, so energy coming together blows up. That's E equals mc squared. All right, that's the singularity. These are facts. Now, all of this is solid fact. None of this is a theory at all. This is all solid facts that nobody bothers to put together. I'm not trying to be cocky or anything, but everyone would rather fight and argue instead of just sit back, do a little bit of work on it, then submit the idea to both the people fighting so they can know and quit fighting. Okay, now, so this Big Bang happens. Energy transforms into matter. Matter reduces, becoming energy again. Okay, so this high energy state, this singularity, it wants to exist, this nuclear and electric energy wants to exist in a low energy state. And it'll exist for a long time in a low energy state. So it converts into matter. See what I'm saying? So it goes from complete energy coming together into a singularity, boom, now it starts to cool and turns into matter and stars and such. Those are the sparks. Just like a firework, just like a bottle rocket going in the air and blowing up. You see all the sparks fly out and then just disappear as they burn out? That's exactly what's going to happen to our universe, just on a way grander scale. Now that part is just a theory, but I mean, come on, that's kind of obvious. So, in my opinion, it's not necessarily a theory, it's kind of a fact. So, all of this points toward this happening, which is only common sense, really. So, these are facts that point out more common sense that has to be, it can only be a fact. And literally, alpha and omega, which is nuclear and electric energy, that is all around us. From the religious point of view here, now, like I was saying with us being gods, humans are gods too. We are stars. That's why we are sons of God, or sons of God, which are stars, because we have alpha, which is nuclear energy in us. We get it from our father. And omega, which is electric energy. That's what we get from our mothers. Okay? It's bionuclear and bioelectric energy. All right? So, these are facts. This is fact. It relates to metaphysics and ancient science, which people want to not consider. Now, there are people in the world that know that ancient technology did exist, and the ancient man did have some form of technology and knowledge about these things, but the Catholic churches suppress this stuff. This is stuff that's in the Vatican that's hidden, okay? And we release stuff like this in movies and video games and stuff like that, all right? Because they basically run everything. You know, there's no knowledge that's not power. Understanding this knowledge will give us the power of metaphysics. And that's why it's suppressed, because we destroyed the planet with it before. All right, so we are gods. We can manipulate nuclear and electric energies, okay? We command the earth, all right? Now, John indicates we are gods. John 10:34. Psalms 82:6. These indicate that we are gods, all right? Space itself, with nothing in it, is potential. Okay, that's will and inevitability. This is the will of God, because this is will. This is what will be. This is what can happen in that space, that void of space. That means there's nothing there. There's nothingness, but that space is something. That is potential. That means something can happen. Okay, so with that and the first law of thermodynamics, which are nuclear and electric energy, you have the nuclear alpha, which would be the male energy, and that emits beta decay, which is your X factor, or the electrons. So that means that the male energy carries the male and female. Just like in nature, we see the male carrying both Y and X factors, because a man carries both. Okay, so here's another indication. We see this in nature, okay? This is connecting the quantum nature of the universe, the religious and the science factors, okay? You have both. You have both factors here, X and Y, all right? Now, this is the beginning and the end. This is, was, and always will be. This nuclear and electric energy in space will always be, okay? It'll just be cyclical. It'll burn out, come together again, boom, turn into another universe, and eventually burn out and do it all over again, all right? This is your Y factor, your protons and neutrons. Your X factor is your electrons. This is basically like a holy trinity. Okay? So this is literally omniscience and omnipresence. See, just like the ovum. This is half of a haploid cell. This is the X factor. This is the ovum. It looks like a star. Okay? It's not the fact that it looks like it. It literally acts similar to how a star would act, or a singularity would act whenever it's gathering energy to create a living being. All right? You have your nuclear, okay? I call this soul bonding, basically, because it's energy from a male, energy from a female, bonding together to create energy, which is a new life, okay? And it's only procreation. I mean, it's as simple as that. But there are things that we miss that tie into the quantum nature that physicists either don't see or literally is being suppressed for a reason. See, here's the singularity, which would be the original cell, the first cell in the universe. Okay? Alpha and omega, the nuclear and electric energy come together. Just like stars, same difference here, same thing. A planet, same thing. Nuclear and electric energy. It's got its nuclear core, it's got electrical shell. Mother Earth, that's the X factor. Okay, the egg, the ovum. Okay, the biological cell, same way. It's got its nuclear and its electric. Atoms, they have their nuclear and they have their electric shell. Okay, there's the male and the female energies, the yin and yang, that come together to create the universe. Okay, now inside that space, I'm just going to get to the point where all of our elementary particles come from, like our bosons and the photon gauge bosons and such. All right, your scalar field is where your singularity is going to form. Before that, you only have nuclear and electric energy, that male and female energy, okay, scattered across the universe, which basically will come together to form the first cell. All right, which this is where your bosons and all of these particles come together. This is why we have these. Okay, your Z and W bosons. Okay, this is basically Lorentz transformation. Okay, this is the Higgs field. Look up Lorentz transformation. Everything is there except for the fact that this is the identity of what they're talking about. This is the scalar boson. Okay, the God particle, the Higgs boson. It's very, very heavy. This light one they found is not the real Higgs boson. That's why they're suspecting there might be a real Higgs boson, because there is. But we're never going to find it. We have to know that it's already happened and gave birth to everything. Just a little illustration here. You have your ovum, which is all the electrons in the universe. Then you have your protons and neutrons, all the protons and neutrons in the universe. A panspermia kind of scenario here. Okay? Then it literally becomes a living universe of plasma, like a giant cell. And inside this vastness of infinite space, there are many of these cells, which are universes. And they're basically scattered around just like stars are scattered in the sky to us. But imagine if you zoom out way far enough on a very, very, very grand scale that you will literally have a bunch of universes instead of just stars. Now, there's only finite matter inside a universe, okay? But there's infinite matter and energy in the vast of space. So yes, there's finite matter and energy inside every universe, but in the vastness of space and infinity, there's infinite matter and energy. That means that there are many other universes. That philosophical equation there basically indicates that yes, there's a multiverse. There has to be. Logically, there has to be a multiverse because space can't be created or erased. That means it has to always be. And time doesn't start until the Big Bang. That means that dark energy is technically just momentum of the expansion or the explosion of that singularity that is growing, and that is time. So time technically doesn't exist until you add matter. Once you have matter relative to space, then time can actually exist. This is another fact that's unrealized. These are all unrealized facts. But I'm just throwing these out there to kind of solve some of these fighting and arguing, because literally there's no reason we need to fight and argue about it, because that's not getting anything done. But if you sit back and think about it for a second and look at it and just look at the information, we have all the information we need. We have all of the proof right in front of us. But nobody seems to be putting it together because the fighting and arguing makes money, so it's not told to us. And I think people are so unhappy these days that they want to fight and argue because it makes them feel better. But there's no need in all of it. And it always originates with the people that are hiding the truth from us. There's no knowledge that's not power. And that's that power they have over us. Okay, so you have, boom, your explosion, the Big Bang. Everything spreads out and starts to burn out. Eventually, all the sparks and stars burn out, reducing to ash. Okay? And so you'll have basically just ashes and nuclear and electric energy again once the universe burns out. But it's all going to come together again, and it all collapses and reforms. This is basically where the universe would revert back into ash, but it works in reverse here. Now, it's not necessarily working in reverse, it's just accreting. That's all it's doing. It's instead of spreading outward, it's collapsing inward. It would be kind of like time in reverse. But even this moving in reverse is still time perpetuating in a linear fashion. So like the phoenix rising from the ashes, I think this is where the original idea of the phoenix comes from, and Marvel stuff actually seeks out a lot of this, believe it or not. But I'm just saying, the fact is, the universe birthing from the ashes would be basically the phoenix. The fire, the light, the singularity coming into fruition once again to literally create a living universe. See, this nuclear and electric energy together, basically these nuclear and electric energy are just potential energy. So in the void of vast space that looks like this with nothing, all you have is the space, which is potential for occurrence, and then you have potential energy, which is the micropotential. So you only have potential, and that is will and inevitability, because that potential is will, and that will is what will be, which is inevitable. That means that is basically the will of God, which will create a living universe. So you have all that potentialness coming together, potential energy, and when it goes boom, kinetic, that's when time starts. So the dark energy is basically time, but it's kinetic energy because they've exploded. That's what it is. That's what time is. It's a linear motion of kinetic energy, which is time. And when you have an explosion like that, you're literally going to have a loud echo and a ringing. Okay? So that, if you've ever heard anything explode, that's what you have. You have a loud sound, and then you hear that ringing in your ear. Well, that ringing is what helps galaxies come together. This is the dark matter. This sound in the waters of space is what dark matter is. And that gives basically momentum to the galaxies and helps them form together in shapes and things that we see in patterns. Because we know we can run sound frequencies through water, and we can get weird designs like snowflakes and galaxy-looking structures. And we can run it through sand, which bounces. I've seen a guy use sand, and it does the same thing. It forms all kinds of patterns, and it looks like snowflakes and stuff. So this dark matter is basically the sound that creates. And sound turns into light in the waters. Okay, so if we have a sound bubble, when it hits the surface, boom, it turns into light. We don't know why it does this. I kind of understand why it does it, because of the energy, but in a way that actually coincides with this theory. It actually puts that into perspective, because that sound will become the light, and that sound would be what the voice of God is, because space is loud, and that dark sound will turn to light, which is a singularity. And space literally feels the weight of our universe, okay? And like our sun does to space, creates these ripples in the fabric of space, and then we get orbits. That's similar to what our universe does, okay? This is where gravitons come in, because gravitons exist on the microcosm, the nutricosm, and the macrocosm. See what I'm saying? Because gravity exists on all these fundamental cosms. Gravitons can grow. They can grow from very, very small to very, very big. It's a force rather than a particle. But that's what gravitons or gravity is. In the whole of space, as in the whole of space, and as a whole, as in a whole, a void whole of space. Okay? It's ironic how both of these words can be used exactly to describe this. I believe that's one of the origins. There's a lot of those that I've ended up running across in here. Because space is an open system, okay? There's no ground. A universe is a closed system, an absolute zero ground state, near zero. So it wants to cool and go back to ground state, but it can't because there's no ground. So it never actually reaches absolute zero. It never stops. So it reaches its maximum reversion when it burns out, and its maximum entropy. Okay, the maximum reversion is carbon, nuclear, and electric energy in a finite closed system. Okay, that's what you have. That's when you have basically this over again. Okay, ashes, nuclear, and electric energy. The maximum entropy. Now there's not much motion to it. Not heat, motion, nothing. It's almost at ground state. But like I said, there's no ground in space because it's an infinite open system. So you have a near thermal equilibrium here. All right? So once you have a thermal equilibrium, everything will be the same. Ground state literally the same temperature. It would be dead. But it's not. It's nearly ground state. It's almost a thermal equilibrium, but not quite. So then it has no place else, once it reaches its minimal energy output, to start forming again. It has no place else to go but up. And I don't mean as in a direction. I mean that as forming anew. And as I said about this being like the first cell in the universe, well, let me explain this first. All right. Carbon, nuclear, and electric energy recoalesce into a macro cell, which is a singularity. Self-born universe from microcosm inside a macrocosm. Electrons won't interact with the strong force, protons, because of the neutron. Remains in a plasma state. That's why it remains in a plasma soupy state. The Big Bang Theory and the plasma universe theory together are the truth, not just one or the other. All right, a cell, low entropy system, self-replicate. Cells can extract energy from the surroundings, okay? Basically, it does exactly what the singularity does whenever it's recoalescing. See, like a cell would do, this would literally be coalescing and from the atmosphere and surrounding areas gaining its energy. Exchanging matter from its surroundings. That means it's getting energy and it's going to absorb this energy and it's going to emit this energy too in the form of heat or light. It's a non-equilibrium system. That means this is a perpetuation for life. This means it's hotter than the rest of space because it's non-equilibrium. If it was equilibrium, it'd be the same temperature. So it forms a singularity, which is plasma, just like anything living is made of plasma, nuclear and electric energy. All right, so it's literally like the first cell in the universe, comparable to the first cell in the universe, a quantum cell, which births into a living universe. It's a non-equilibrium thermodynamics. It's ever-changing universe in an open system. Okay, classic thermodynamics can't apply. Can't reach absolute zero because there is no ground. Can go from cold to hot. Potential for occurrence and the potential energy, or the micropotential. Okay, that's when it goes from cold to hot. That's when it recoalesces into a singularity or a cell, or into the hot that becomes the universe. Then I start getting into the bioelectrical energy, the bionuclear bioelectric. See, potential stored, kinetic used. This is the energy of anything alive. We store energy and use fusion with our food into our bodies to create energy to store, so we can use it in a kinetic way. So literally the macrocosm mimics everything that humans do, everything on the microcosm, as above so below. These are all solid facts that I've managed to connect that aren't being recognized, and why and people's perspective is so far off. This is what God is. All of this that I've explained is what God is. Okay? It's not like it's a floating man. Like I said, it's literally this energy and